Greta Thunberg, or as somebody likes to call her as Greta no Thunberg, is joining another flotilla that's going to Gaza. They've already started. They launched, or sort of like, what you call it? They started yesterday around, I think it was like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. Central European time. Now they're somewhere. There is actually, you can actually track. They're basically sharing their position at all times. So they are somewhere between sort of like Sicily and Crete right now, sort of like in the middle. And yeah, their goal is to reach Gaza in next few days, unless something stops them. Of course, they shouldn't be able to. There is a blockade on Gaza by Israel, so they shouldn't be able to. So we'll see what happens. And this is not the first flotilla. There was one some weeks ago, and there was also one in 2010. So we'll discuss all of that. We'll go through her video. Joining me today are Nicholas Provenzo and ER Reichel. Thank you guys for joining me today. And I'll go to you, Nicholas, first. Yeah, what do you make? Have you been watching the news about sort of the last when it happened a few weeks ago? So for those who don't remember, there was a different ship that was supposed to go, but it was basically two drones attacked it, and they were unable to move. Nobody, I believe, nobody was killed or injured, but the ship was not able to go. We technically do not know who did it. But it's assumed that it was Israel, but Israel didn't comment on this. Nicholas, any first thoughts on this? And then we'll go to her video.
Well, it's the Thunberg spectacle. That's her whole shtick. She's not proposing solutions. She never does, other than abject sacrifice. But I'm just stunned at how anyone in the West who has grown up and benefited from the West's freedoms, from its prosperity, from its respect for rights, looks at Hamas and finds a victim. And that's what's stunning about her. But when you think about it, it really closely integrates with her green activism, where she's not looking at what makes human life good. She's looking at something altogether different. With her green activism, it's sacrificing yourself for nature. For Hamas, I'm at a loss. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Does she have the blinders on in regards to Hamas, or is she fully aware of what they are and embraces it and looks at Israel and says, that's what I hate? And I would say if that's the case, then it's classic hatred for the good for being good. Because what else could you lock onto but Israel's virtues compared to Hamas? And what would you wind up with other than hatred if you were her? So, I'm kind of interested to hear what you gentlemen think about it.
Yeah, I'll go to you, ER, in a second. I will comment on her support of Palestinians a bit later, but sort of her support of environmentalism is really interesting when you put it in parallel. Again, I'm paraphrasing Kirk Wilcox. He talks about Greta Thunberg, or talked in the past, and I really liked his example is, ask yourself a question. Do you think Greta Thunberg, do you think sometimes in the future she'll be like, okay, we solved climate change, now let's fire up stock market. Let's make productivity possible. Let's just create great businesses now that we've like solved climate change. Or will it be this forever sort of there is always something we need to take care of. There's always like some catastrophe that is nearing. Yeah, I mean, to go to you, ER, what do you make? Yeah, is she? Are people like her sort of like blind to Hamas, or what's happening?
Well, I have two parts. The first part is quite short and the second is quite long, so I'll start with the short part. I think Greta is a case of supreme second-handedness, but it's like an active second-handed mind. And it seems as if, and this is, I don't have too much facts back in this, but this is my hunch regarding this, is that her parents really wanted to be famous, and they wanted Greta to be famous. They wanted to have this project, so they popped all of these balloons with her, and climate really worked for them, and it became a huge hit and a huge success for them. I think way more than they expected. So they went all in with that, and she became a symbol for the fight against the climate. I call it the fight against humanity. And I think joining the pro-Palestinians is just the next step for such a person who doesn't really have any principles or any true worldview. I think Greta worldview, and she accepted it from her parents, is that I want to be famous, I want to be a symbol. That's her worldview, and she's going to join the most evil and horrible and destructive movements there are. I don't think she really cares, and she will speak about it with great emotion and passion, and have her speeches, which are quite dumb. Oh, like, I watched her video on X. Yeah, we have this boat, and we're gonna come with food and medical supplies to Gaza to break the siege. Like, who are you fooling? Like, this is a joke. This is obviously like a move to scrutinize Israel and to put Israel in a position that, like, she'll get in trouble. Uh, and regarding the ideology and the green ideology and the pro-Palestine, all this, I have a lot to say, and I'll keep it for later for now.
Yeah, I mean, Nicholas, what do you think? Is it really sort of just she's just jumping on whatever is sort of like popular, right? It's, when she came into sort of like, I'm trying to remember when she even sort of like started being popular. Was it when she was like 13 or so?
She started being a thing in her home community in Stockholm, and it was she'd go to one of the government bodies and protest outside. And I think because she was a young thinker, I think what she latched onto was that emotion was very powerful. And so the idea of this young child telling all us hypocrites that, how dare we destroy the pristine environment and thereby threaten her. And remember, I mean, the one speech that she gave that ended up going viral was how her youth was stolen from her. It was stolen from her, and it was just absurd hyperbole, but very emotional, and that landed undeservedly, but it landed. And I think she's been running with it ever since. So she finds the buttons and she presses them. And with that smug, like in a different world, I think she'd be a nun. So she harkens back to that smug, emotional, envious push that you got to sacrifice. You are the nasty hypocrite. You're the one living high on the hog, and this is how it ought to be. And I'm going to call you on it, because she exploits the fact that the West does not defend its virtues. I mean, who other than objectivists name and defend its virtues on explicit terms? Very few. So she gets away with a lot more than she should. And because she successfully hit that nerve, she's been this force ever since. But again, if you peel back the emotional appeals, there's no substance there. And I'd be embarrassed if that was my child just speaking so ridiculously on anything. And so she never got the redirection, like, well, there are facts that you might want to consider. And they're, I mean, just how about, what is your ship going to achieve once it lands in Gaza? You're going to hand out some food. Okay. How are you going to end the war? You've put a Band-Aid on a situation. You prevented, people having to scourge for a meal in the face of a conflict. Thank you. But how does that break Hamas's back so it never threatens the peaceful again? How does that eliminate the horrific brainwashing of a population in favor of just vile Jew hatred? Nothing more. I mean, it's really naked and base. How are you solving any of those problems? Are you going to tell Israel to stop? How is Israel then going to respond the next slaughter? So, I mean, it's just absurd. And yet, here we are having to deal with this product of a vile ideology having its way on our culture. It's very disturbing.
Somebody is asking where Greta is right now. I'll put the link in the chat. Basically, they are tracking themselves, so you can follow it live where exactly they are. They are about halfway, or sort of like a third of way to Crete. So basically in the middle of nowhere, and they are posting everything on social media, so you can also follow them if you like to see the nice sunsets and sunrises over
It's
the
her summer
horizon.
tour.
Uh, uh, but yeah, sort of like separate. I mean, you said something interesting about sort of like how yeah, she really does exploit our morality, because this is what we sort of now have accepted in the West, right? We all accept altruist morality, but we all also accept that this is not a way to live by. It's a horrible way to live, right? And in this regard, she kind of reminds me of Mother Teresa, right? Mother Teresa, she's the pinnacle of morality, but nobody wants to live like her. And in the same way, we all agree, everybody agrees with Greta, right? Everybody agrees when it comes to, I mean, both the Palestinian issues and the environmentalism, right? We all sort of, and by we of course mean besides objectivists and sort of like few sort of like better people, but general public agrees with everything he says, everything she says. We just disagree with we just do not want to live in that regard.
We're the
So
hypocrites. She's the consistent one because
yeah,
she's and because the mass of the culture believes that we're hypocrites, that's what gives her traction. And so it's the classic case of she's observed that hypocrisy and run with it. And even though she doesn't pack much bandwidth in terms of an intellectual argument that you could look at and unpack and say, all right, you got a grain of truth here and seven things wrong over there. No, I mean, there's nothing other than her very smug emotional appeals. And I guess it also shows how bad our opponents are, because that she's resonated and become their poster child. I mean, let's imagine that our opponents were better. What would they argue? Well, they would argue facts. They would argue that there's this thing that you have to take into account. There's that thing that you have to take into account. And if you don't, some bad things happen. So it'll cost you if you fail to heed our warnings, whatever they may be. But that would be a logical, rational argument. She doesn't offer that at all. It's, again, you stole my childhood. How dare you? And again, what is her defense of Hamas? I mean, she whitewashes it tacitly, but she's not saying, hey, you guys don't understand Hamas. You guys aren't seeing it right. You don't understand that they're just trying to do this and they're just trying to do that. And this is all the natural outflow. I mean, maybe she does, but I haven't seen it. It's this stunt, and it's a stupid stunt at that.
Yeah, I want to go to the a bit later, the Freedom Flotillas. They have a website and they have their goals, which I think are kind of interesting. But I want to go to the video that Greta published. But before that, anything to add before we watch the video?
I just think I don't remember if I said it, but I wrote it down for me before the show. I wrote it. Greta is a symbol of the world becoming ever more insane. And she's a symbol because she is the emotionalism and tribalism in one person. Like, she's the poster child of people just teaching reason.
Yeah.
I'm looking at their website now. I gotta soak this in. It's like, oh my goodness.
All right. Let's watch the video.
Hello, I am currently standing on the Madeleine, the ship that on Sunday, June 1st, will attempt to again sail towards Gaza and to try to break the siege and open up a humanitarian corridor by delivering aid like food and medical supplies.
Okay, so I want to stop already here to comment on a few things. There's like two separate things that are going on, right? She's talking about opening humanitarian corridor. That's open. Israel is giving out aid. Israel has been giving out aid the whole time. Israel has been, besides sort of like a few weeks throughout the 600 days, it has been allowing humanitarian aid or straight up giving out aid this whole time. So again, this idea that there isn't enough humanitarian aid is simply like ridiculous, right? And Nicholas, you talked about sort of like arguing the points, but it's never about it. There is no enough humanitarian aid Israel could give. There's always gonna be that there's no enough. There's always as long as Israel has any control over it, it's never going to be good enough. And sort of separately, like breaking the siege. I mean, to go, I'll go to you, Iyar, on this. What do you make of like this breaking the siege? Well, one, sort of like, what do you think Israel will do when it comes to this? If this will continue, if the ship will go further, but also it's important to remember if this is actually sort of this would be giving out aid, this is helping the enemy. Israel shouldn't allow any sort of like if during World War II there was like a ship going from what was like a neutral country during World War II. I don't know, like I don't know
Switzerland.
if it,
Switzerland.
Sure, Switzerland, like sending aid to like Nazi Germany or Japan and saying, well, this is just humanitarian corridor. We're just sending out aid. No, you should it down. You don't allow this aid to go in. You don't allow somebody supporting your enemy. So yeah, I mean to go to you, Iyar, what do you make of both sort of like what she's saying and what do you think Israeli response will be?
I think, of course, she has no right to come to Gaza. This is currently a war zone. Basically, this is just an act against Israel. And I think about Israel's interest, because if Greta arrives at Gaza, she can be kidnapped by, I don't know, the communist fraction of the Popular Front for Palestine or from Islamic Jihad or whatever, or she can be used as a human shield. And then we're screwed, because if something happens to Greta, the whole world is going to blame Israel. So that's like a very a huge risk for Israeli interest. What Israel should do, I think Israel should arrest her on international water. She should just send the Navy to arrest her on international water and just turn her into I don't know where. But this is like the only option for us, since they're already on their way. And this is just absurd. This is just completely, as I said, the world has gone crazy.
Yeah, Nicholas, what do you make of both the sort of opening humanitarian corridor argument and saying that we are breaking the siege?
Well, I would disagree with her argument from the outset. There's no crisis in Gaza save for what Hamas imposes. So anywhere that Hamas does not control has free a movement of materials that the civilian population need to survive. But the way that Hamas has entrenched itself, the way that it continues to operate, the way that it embeds itself in civilian areas causes the very conditions that Thurnberg is laying on the feet of Israel, which is, of course, horrifically unjust. In terms of the blockade, I think Israel is absolutely right to declare a blockade and enforce it. And I would just enforce it as simply as turning the ship back. I mean, the ship will not be allowed to pass. And if you got to bang into it in order to effectuate that, let it be. But because of the nature of the conflict, Israel has a complete rational interest in seeing how aid and supplies get to the people of Hamas. So they're not or get to the people of Gaza, the innocent civilians, so-called innocent civilians, because that's a tough one to analyze in a situation where the population so strongly supports the horrors imposed by Hamas. But I would argue that any line of communication has to be examined and vetted, so it's not allowing Hamas to continue to function. Gaza will be much better when Hamas folds, and we want everything in our power to support that goal, which means making sure that Hamas fighters are not fed. So if the fuel that they're using right now is civilian aid, then we have to or Israel has to very carefully analyze exactly how aid is being dispersed in Gaza, so you don't have that inadvertent benefit to Hamas. So but Thurnberg just negates all that thought, all that problem. She doesn't address anything about October 7th. She doesn't address the horrific slaughter. She doesn't address the philosophy that the Gazans have embraced that perpetuate this violence. And she looked, it's like this very myopic, oh, but I want to bring aid to the civilians. Well, again, why is this even an open question? Why are we even worried about the civilians? Because Hamas is embedded with them, terrorizing them and Israel simultaneously. And like a classic horrific evader, she ignores all that information and just comes in with this stupid stunt. And we have to suffer through it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's this continuous, I mean, even sort of like saying they just want to help those people is like giving them benefit of the doubt, which I don't think they deserve, right? Like the goal of this is not about the Palestinian people, or well, it kind of is. It's not about the welfare of the Palestinian people. It's about Israel. It's about the fact that Israel for them is a legitimate regime, and they will do whatever they can to sort of delegitimize it. So, like Yara said, right? Once you start this, once you do something like this, you are putting Israel into sort of impossible situation because of our morality, because we sort of believe that as long as you don't have any weapons on hand and go to break a blockade or go to do something that you're not supposed to do, or in the West, right, like block streets or anything, as long as you don't have weapons in hand, somehow this is like a just thing. Somehow this is like a moral thing or like an acceptable thing to do, which is never the case.
I wonder if they even made an attempt. Have they even, her organization or whatever this group is, has it even attempted to contact Israel in order to secure safe passage if they wanted to honestly provide aid to the innocents of the war? And I would probably guess that they haven't. And probably because their terms would be utterly unacceptable to Israel for the very reasons that we discussed just a moment ago. So, I mean, again, this is the classic spectacle farce that is so indicative of that part of our culture today. And I think we have to identify exactly what animates it. And that's a truly vicious hatred for Israel. And what's the only thing that explains that hatred for Israel? Hatred of their success, hatred of their freedom, and the worship of its polar negative, which would be Hamas. And it's obscene because, if Thurnberg lived in the Palestinian controlled area, in Gaza, in Hamas controlled areas, she'd be an utter subject to their every whim and, forced to veil and everything else. But she looks at Israel and she finds them as the problem. And it's just such a stunning moral aversion. It really shocks the conscience, yet it's rampant. It's rampant. It's rampant among the youth. And, it's rampant on the universities of Columbia and Harvard and whatnot. And again, you have to ask yourself, what is it that we're doing that leads to this horrific breach of morality? And I would argue that it's the same thing that she exploited with environmentalism. The culture at large, bunch of hypocrites. They live one way, preach another. She calls out the hypocrisy, and that's how she gets her claim to fame.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting if they coordinated, but we've already seen in the past that nothing Israel can do is good enough, right? And that is what, yeah, we are.
This is obviously a provocation and a publicity stunt. Of course, it's not like, this is not about, oh, we have to deliver this aid to the Palestinians. As we know right now, not that I'm a huge supporter of that, but Israel is currently providing food and whatever the Palestinian needs anyway. And I wrote up something quite long. I don't know if we have the time, but I'll go for it. And it goes like this. So I think it is wrong to look at the Palestinians as Palestinians, and I'll explain. So when we call those people Palestinians, it implies they are either a nation or an ethnic group or something like that. But they're not. It's the people that are mostly just, of Arab ethnicity. They're Egyptians, Syrians, Jordans, Lebanese, or whatever. And by the way, that's also their names. They're called El Masri or whatever, El Zaytuni. They're named based on the place or the Hamula or the tribe or the family. So the question is, what is a Palestinian? And to explain that, I'd like to introduce a new concept, and I call it Palestineism. What is Palestineism? This is an ideological and political movement, and the whole idea of the movement is to oppose Zionism. So this is the exact opposite of Zionism in structure and in moral content. So basically, when you hear about Palestinians or about pro-Palestinians, which are the people in the West who support the Palestinians, this is basically the same thing. This is people who are believe or so-called members of this Palestineism movement. Now, to understand this movement, let's talk about Zionism. So 140 years ago, a bunch of Jews gathered to create this Zionist movement, and they've recognized the fact that Jews are persecuted around the world. And unfortunately, 140 years later, today, this fact is still present. This fact is still a part of our reality, unfortunately. So 140 years ago and to this day, basically, Zionism is about establishing a safe haven for Jews after centuries of persecution. And this safe haven is a place here in Israel, where I currently am. And now let's talk about Palestineism. This is about the opposite. The whole point is about to erase the Jewish state. It's about either killing all the Jews in Israel or throwing them away, and it could be done in war, in propaganda, in moral inversion, in making all the world go against Israel, in using the victim card, all sorts of evil ways. This is Palestineism. It's not a movement for Palestinians. It's a movement against Jews, particularly in Israel. If Zionism is for the life of Jewish people, Palestineism is for the death of Jewish people. If Zionism is about building a state, Palestineism is about destroying a state. Zionism is based on facts, on historical facts. Palestineism is based on trying to rewrite history. Zionism is about defending the Jews. It's about being defensive. Palestineism it's about being aggressive. It's about being hostile. And this is I'd like to shout for Nicholas. It's exactly what you said. This is the hatred for the good for being good. This is an anti-movement. That's what it's all about. Now, Palestineism has a lot of motivations. So originally, it was Islam. People based on the Islamic religion wanted to kill the Jews because it's how could the Jews come and claim sovereignty in an Arab land? And then there was the communist Palestinians who wanted to kill all the Jews and throw them away for reason of, I don't know, Marxism. And then there was the Marxist left, as I said, around the world. And then there was the woke left. And then what used to be the fringe right, but now it's not so fringe, which is just like classical anti-Semitism. And all of these motivations have a single core that is the reason for those motivation, and that is nihilism and envy and hatred for the good, for being good, and a hatred for the self. I think the best profile for an anti-Semite or anti-Jew or anti-Zionist or a pro-Palestinian is a person who hates himself and he hates everyone else that is successful. The self-hating guy, he sees it as if the successful man is committing a crime against him because he hates himself. So how could others have values and achieve them? And when you look at Greta, she studied in the woke left, in climate, for those, and the essence is the same, is nihilism, is anti-human, anti-values, and of course it is branded with emotionalism, with fake morality, and people see it and their heart gets squishy to see this young girl crying for her future. But this is just like makes total sense for me. Like, of course, this is the opposite and wicked, but just so clear that she would join the Palestinism movement and give moral sanction to Hamas, because that's what her ideas all about are in the first place. And just like the Palestinism, it's a movement of destruction, is a movement of opposing Zionism. This is her motivation to join the flotilla. It's not about delivering aid or helping the Palestinians. It's about delegitimizing Israel's right to self-defense, because those people are actually doing something right here in Israel, defending themselves, fighting for good, fighting for their life, and she must do everything she can to stop people from doing the right thing. And she offers moral cover to Hamas for being humanitarian. She chooses the side of destruction here. And this flotilla is a big bluff, just aimed to put Israel in more trouble.
I agree wholeheartedly. I absolutely agree. She's attacking Israel for its virtues. Again, if she was actually concerned about bringing aid to civilians, innocent civilians, non-combatants, we'll call them, her activism would look much different. But that's not her shtick. It takes a special kind of person to look at civilization and hate it, and yet that's precisely what she does. And it's just stunning to me, and probably to you guys as well, just how much of our culture embraces that view and tolerates it. It makes sense that she got her acting chops in the anti-climate movement, because again, she never came through and the mind is the ultimate resource. Let's use our minds to solve a technical problem presented by a civilization. No, it was how dare you, and any she takes like the leave no trace camping mantra and turns it into a genocidal program almost, if you follow it to its logical end. Because again, you don't have a right to exist. You don't have a right to impact nature. Nature in and of itself is an intrinsic value, and you're the blight upon it. So she takes this really astonishing posture, but our culture gives her tremendous cover for it. Because again, it's always I wish there wasn't a shopping mall here, even though you go in that very shopping mall and shop. I wish that everything was a national park and wilderness. I always like it when it's the wilderness, like you can't even go into it. There's a movement in my community where they were arguing that there should be parts of the national parks that are nearby that should be forbidden to any human entry because reasons. And, you could sell me on the parks are a nice place to recreate, and maybe we should pool our resources to have them in a non-coercive way. But, we're going to set aside land that humans are just forbidden to enter is just absurd. And yet this movement exists. I think you're absolutely right. Palestinianism is a good name for it. If I were to try and come up with, what would I name this group, it would be people who refuse to allow Israel to exist. And that's their whole soul defining purpose, is all we want to do is destroy Israel, even if it means our own destruction. And we're not interested in building anything. We're not interested in turning Gaza into something worth living. We want to destroy Israel, and we'll do anything we can. We'll fight a foolish war that'll only wreak retribution against us, and that's our shtick. That was our goal. Why would you carry out October 7th knowing that you are not in a position of strength? You can get away with a stunt, but you can't fight a extended campaign unless you wanted to do this very thing where Israel, and fighting for its own right to survive, is starving us, and this is unfair. And we must therefore enjoin Israel. And she's the useful idiot that gives Hamas the spotlight it needs in order to carry out that argument. And it's vicious and vile. And you don't see a whole lot of people naming it for what it is. And Trump's visit to the Middle East earlier this month, where he's saying it was wrong of the United States to impose itself on the dictatorships of Afghanistan and Iraq. and we'll never do that again. You have a wonderful culture. Well, why is it wonderful? What about it is wonderful? He doesn't say. He just throws the bromide out there. And it was stunning. And it was the exact opposite that part of the world needed to hear. They should have been, any support that you give to Hamas is wicked and vile. And the sooner you withdraw that support, the better we'll be, and the sooner we'll have peace. But, he didn't make that, and it was a huge missed opportunity. Instead, he pandered to him and got a jet in the process. So, yeah, it's astonishing to me, and I'm sure it is to you guys as well.
Yeah, I want to comment on the idea of Palestinianism, or whatever we want to call it. But first, we have a super chat from Gail. Thank you so much. A super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. And a super chat from Christian. Thank you so much. He says, the Doom Goblin is sailing to Gaza to meet the merchants of death, cheered by useful idiots and her Marxist parents. That flotilla should be stopped by the Israeli Marine. I mean, I'm sure it will. We will know about it in next, hopefully very soon, but at the latest, at the next few days. I think it only should take about like 3 or 4 days for them to get to Gaza. But yeah, I mean, oh, we have one more super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. I mean, what's really interesting about this idea of Palestinian, right? It's you never see any diversity of opinions when it comes to Palestinians. You never have like a Palestinian who is like pro-Israeli. He's like, oh, I'm Palestinian, but yeah, I want Israel to reassert itself in Gaza.
Yeah, who
because
lives
Hamas...
more than 3 days? Yeah, exactly.
No, but even like in the West, right? We have our Palestinian representatives in the House, and it's not like any of them are. Well, we have one. It's not like she is, this like pro-Israeli. She is the most like pro-Hamas. She's the most pro-Palestinian or so-called like pro-Palestinian person out there. And when you sort of look at the way the Palestinians have been treated, it's clear that the only goal is, that's why I say that, people who call for wiping out of Israel are calling for genocide of Palestinians, because once Israel gets wiped out, there are no Palestinians. There is no concept of Palestinian. It doesn't mean anything. The only sort of meaning Palestinians have always had is as a sort of resistance to Israel. Because look at everything that happened, right? Did they establish a state after after the War of Independence? No, because there was no reason to. Did they try to resettle the refugees at any point? No, because we need them to stay here to fight against Israel forever. Was there ever attempt to, and we create this special organization to sort of like handle them separately? What is the most, whenever there is a sort of like talk about, two-state solution, what is like the issue that Palestinians will never put away? The right to return. Everybody has to come back. Everybody has to come back. So even if there is a state, they can destroy it from within. So basically, you just get so many people in that the Jewish people no longer have majority. And we've seen what the Palestinians have been doing when there is a border between them. Imagine what will happen when there is no border sort of like separating them. So yeah, you have everything that has been ever set up by Palestinians or by the international world for the Palestinians has been to fight Israel. It's never been about there is another important point, and I think Nicholas, you sort of alluded to it. It's never about building something, right? When the Palestinians got all of Gaza, you can do whatever they want.
You could have turned it into Hong Kong. You could Singapore. You could have made it a tax-free zone and had so much investment there. You could have turned it into the jewel of the Mediterranean, and they did not. And why? Because I think, as you are saying, they're blinded by their hatred of Jews. And
yeah, I've been. There is a museum in Jerusalem called the Gush Katif Museum, which talks about when there were Israeli settlements inside of Gaza, and also sort of what happened with the disengagement. And what did Palestinians do with the industry that was left by the Jewish people? Did they adapt it? Did they make use of it? They destroyed all of it. it's never about like any productivity. It's never about building something, right? It's always about simply getting rid of. What happened to all the synagogues in Gaza? They were all destroyed, besides I think one, which they turned into like a chicken coop. Be- they were supposed to, and even what was originally supposed to be the plan, Israel was supposed to destroy those synagogues before leaving. I mean, the it's such a ridiculous scenario. The fact that, and I always make this point, that there's never any demands of Palestinians. There's never any demands of them to build something, to become something. It's always the oppressor. It's always, no, it's Israel that is at fault here. I mean, look at the UN Special Rapporteur to the occupied territories, right? It's not about going into the Palestinian territories and reporting on the violation of so-called human rights by the Palestinian Authority. No, it's by specifically Israel. I mean, yeah, I'm somebody who's watching this from sort of like outside. I've been sort of like always supportive of Israel and always following Israel, but started more after October 7. For me, like the world opinion is like insane. How I cannot even imagine like actually being Israeli and looking at how the world sort of looks at this whole situation.
It's you're used to it. You get used to it. And also this is a, I think, problem with the Jewish mentality, because for thousands of years Jews has been under the custody of a foreign ruler, and as such Jews were always trying to make the ruler happy with them, so he wouldn't massacre them or put them as enslave them, or do whatever. So it's always about Jews were always trying to make the world love them. And this is a part of like Jewish people inner conflict. Now that we have a state and we take care of ourselves, and we get all of this hatred, and our neighbors trying to destroy us, and our friends at the West are like very critical of us, and the Israelis are just trying to you know calm everyone down. And I think this is a mistake. I think we should have been way stronger, way more strict, no, not giving up anything. And in a way, in a sense, Israelis knew what they're doing, and there are indications and evidence that the Israelis knew that they're doing insane things by giving up Gaza for the Palestinians. And I think the most striking evidence is that the Israeli government evacuated all the graves of Jews in Gaza before leaving Gaza, because they figured that the followers of Palestinism, as I said earlier, will just bury out the graves and just like mutilate the bodies, or do whatever to like try to humiliate the dead. So to prevent that, they took away the graves. Now you don't give a piece of land to such people that you are afraid to let them live above your graves.
They can't even leave the dead alone, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like how can you do such thing? And like if we were not to leave Gaza, if we were to establish a true re-education program to eradicate Palestinism, to kill this idea, it could have been way better, because as of now, there are 2 million Arabs live in Israel. Some of them, by the way, define themselves Palestinian, some of them not, which is actually another evidence for my case for Palestinism. This is not an ethnical group, this is an ideology, and there are Arabs in Israel who don't hold this ideology, and they live and they cooperate with the society, and there are great people here. And there are people who define themselves Palestinians, and they do crimes and terror and whatever. Um, so we could have stand up for ourselves, and now we're paying the price for not doing that. And of course, the fault is on Palestinism. The fault is on Hamas and all of those other Palestinians who do whatever they can to try to kill us and destroy us. But this is also like I also very like upset with the way we dealt with it, because we could have prevented this. We could have not give this monster so much power and territory, and feed them and take care of their needs, and give them water and gas and whatever, so they can use whatever they get from us to try to destroy us over and over again.
I agree with that. A war poorly fought just perpetuates the violence. It doesn't end it. And the Palestinianism cause has been around for generations, and well, I was hoping that after the horrors of October 7th, this would have been the final straw, just because the brutality was so transparent and so easy to see that the West would have no choice but to confront it. You know, when you're putting babies in ovens and all manner of brutality that was committed that day, you would hope that people's love of human life would compel them to rise to the occasion, and that would be the demand that Hamas utterly be destroyed and break the back of the ideology that makes Hamas possible, that it would be discredited and shamed and too embarrassed to rear its ugly head again. And horrifically, that hasn't happened. So I just see more conflict until that happens. You can destroy Hamas militarily, and I think Israel has done a heroic job in that regard, in large part. But in order to utterly defeat it, you have to destroy the ideology. You have to convince the people who adhere that ideology to walk away from it, denounce it, and that they see it as their own ruin. Just like the Germans came to realize that Hitler was their own ruin, that the Japanese came to realize that militarism was their own ruin, and renounce those things explicitly, profoundly.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry. Go.
When October 7th happened, it's truly ridiculous to think that we are more than 600 days in, and this is still going on. This is now, I think a few weeks ago, this turned into longest conflict Israel has ever engaged in. Israel was able to beat 4 neighboring countries in 6 days without, like, easily. And it's dealing with Gaza for like more than 600 days. Something that should have been solved in, well, first of all,
if people were animated by the right ideas, maybe it would have been, but they're not, and so it's perpetuating the horror to the threat of Israel's own security. So it really shows you the power of ideas in human relationships and human conflict, because there's this reticence to truly assert your own right to live, because that's what's really happening here. Israel is blameless in regards to the current conflict. Any transgressions are minor and resolved through normal means. So if there's an outlier here or a problem there, there's a fair and judicial, just way of solving those problems. The lion's share of the argument is just that Palestinian and Hamas don't want Israel to exist. They're willing to slaughter them by the bushel, and how dare Israel fight back? And I mean, that should not be a difficult argument to defeat, yet it is in our culture. And that's the problem. And that's where we step in. And I think we really need to make it very clear that by every right, the Israeli people have a right to live free in their country without threat from either inside or out. And there should be no compromise, zero compromise. How do you compromise on your right to life? You can't. And yet that's constantly what the world demands of Israel. And how many votes have been taken place in the UN where the dictatorships of the world condemn Israel for this thing or that thing? Meanwhile, they subjugate their own people violently and immorally. I mean, it's stunning to me how benighted our times are. And yet, this is what we have to deal with. And so, I'll do the pitch today. Like, share, and subscribe if you value this talk, because these ideas don't get out by themselves. We need you to help out. So again, like, share, and subscribe helps this channel grow, and the people who work so hard get the good word out. And I'm sure these guys are grateful for it.
Yeah, and since we still have a little bit of time, let's listen to a little bit more of Greta, since she's the main topic.
The last time we attempted this, about a month ago, the boat Conscience that we were about to board just a couple of hours before we were planning to board and set sail, it got bombed twice, and all evidence suggests that it was Israel who did it.
Oh my god.
So now we are here in Catania, outside of Sicily, to try to continue our mission to try again. Because currently we are watching a systematic starvation of 2 million people, a live stream genocide, and the world's silence is deadly. That
Okay.
I love the beach. She's not going to show you any pictures of them, you know, where the kids are acting out, slaughtering Jews. Like I saw one memory clip where, I mean, they had a kindergartner acting like he was slitting the throat of his Jewish cosplay partner. It was horrific. And so she's not showing that. She's showing the poor urchins of Gaza doing their thing. I mean, it's just stunning, and it's she lays the blame of the conflict squarely on the feet of Israel. How much evidence do you have to evade in order to do that? Yet she does it, and she's not really, you know, being called to account for it. That's what's stunning.
Yeah, I mean, you know, she talks about systemic or systematic starvation, and I wanted to make this point easier about sort of like, it's like, ask yourself if there is something that Israel could do to sort of like be able to justify its existence, right? When it strike at Hezbollah with a pager attack, that was the most like discriminate attack that ever happened. That wasn't good enough. Now Israel is distributing aid, bypassing Hamas. It's going well. Well, I don't think this should happen. But if your standard is that Israel should provide aid, it's going, like, I think, really great so far. And what was the first thing we saw? People are comparing this to Holocaust because people are in lines waiting for food. So it's the same thing as Holocaust. I mean, to ask you, it's probably sort of, it's not even really a question, but is there anything Israel could do when it comes to this to like justify itself among the international community, so Greta doesn't call this a genocide?
The international community loves Israel when Jews die. After October 7th, you know, besides the woke leftist student dancing on the campuses and blaming Israel, the international community was quite sympathetic for Israel. So if you adopt this standard of what should Israel do to, what's the most important thing is that the international community would love Israel, so the Jews just need to die, and there'd be love, and you know, they'll have events memorizing all the Jews of Israel that died, and they'll shed a tear or whatever. And I'm not looking for an exciting funeral. I don't care if they'll scrutinize me, because I'm looking forward to live, and I'm gonna fight for that.
We have a super chat from the Wave Sun. Thank you so much. Sorry to sort of just start wrapping up. Well, I should bring again. We talked about Gaza flotilla. It's specifically Gaza Flotilla Coalition, who sets up these things. And I went on their website to find out what their goals are. And I just want to read the first thing. They have like it's like 5 paragraphs, but I think the first part is pretty interesting. So the goal is to break Israel's more than 17-year illegal and inhumane blockade of the Gaza Strip, which has not only created an ongoing humanitarian crisis, but has deprived Palestinians in Gaza their right to health, safety.
I have to go. There is a missile around.
Oh, sure.
It's been a great time.
Oh, be safe.
Be safe.
All right. Jesus Christ.
This is what life is like in Israel, right? I mean, okay.
I was in the Marine Corps during the first Gulf War in the 1991, and after the war ended, I got to visit Israel, and I became friendly with a whole family of Israelis in Haifa, and they were showing me their Scud bunker that they had for when Saddam was launching his Scud missile attacks against Israel, and it's his attempt to provoke Israel into the war, and then, you know, engender Arab hatred against the whole crusade. And it was just stunning, the nonchalance. Like, this was just, it was a fact of life. They didn't like it, but they lived with it. They accepted it, and all for the sin of trying to live free as a Jew. And I was really struck by that, both, you know, the heroism and the tragedy of life in that country. And again, you know, walk through the community, beautiful communities. I felt very safe and at peace, and you know, absolutely loved it. Made great friends when I was there, and so, you know, I was very, I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Most Americans don't get a chance to visit Israel, and I was very grateful for the opportunity to have that. And again, you know, just the day-to-day horror and challenge that accepted all the same, just for the sin of wanting to be free and live as a Jew. And, you know, just there you go.
ER, you safe?
Yes, I'm in the stair hallway.
Yeah, I mean, so I was reading that, but we can sort of ignore that. Okay, I'll just finish it. Humanitarian crisis, but has deprived Palestinians in Gaza the right to health, safety, freedom of movement, among other fundamental human rights. So again, they're talking about sort of like fundamental human rights, which is sort of like a wrong concept. They should
Let's
think
talk
of
about Yavar's fundamental human right to live free of a missile attack, and his family, and you know, just these indiscriminate, stupid attacks that we hear and shrug off in the West as another day, another dollar, and yet, you know, it's everyday life for Israelis. And you know, where's Greta on her maybe we shouldn't tolerate the bombing of innocent Israelis blockade or whatever? She's nowhere to be found. So
yeah,
it's
but
just,
also
it's just I'm sorry.
Also no mention of Hamas, right? It's all Israel is somehow depriving rights of Gaza.
Well, she probably doesn't want to mention Hamas because it would be embarrassing to her, because that's the reality that she can't confront. She can't whitewash, as try as she may by ignoring it. She ultimately cannot whitewash Hamas. She cannot differentiate its brutality from the facts on the ground. And you know, yeah, it's a self-serving omission.
Well, with that, we are running out of time. So, any last thoughts from you? And also, where can people find or follow you?
Yeah, so you can find me at www.victory.now and read about our movement and book. And you know, sending you warm regards from the hallway.
Yeah, you stay safe.
Stay safe.
Nicholas, any last thoughts from you? And where can people find you?
Well, again, thank you for having me as a guest. I have a Substack page, so my name on Substack, and I'm putting out articles as I can. And definitely appreciate you guys hosting the forum and having the conversation. And, you know, very grateful. Again, I encourage people who enjoyed this talk to like, share, and subscribe and help these guys out.
Yeah, and we have one more super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. He's asking, does Israel have an official statement about the flotilla? So I don't think so, at least last time I checked. Nothing so far, but we'll see. They didn't comment at all on the last flotilla, even after the attack, so we might not see anything in this regard, but it might be different. We'll have to see. And somebody also said the normalization of the Houthi attack in the last few days has been disappointing. And somebody says the missile was intercepted, so that's great to hear. But yeah, I still have, when I was in Israel, I had my Red Alert, the app for Israelis to basically know when something is coming, and I still have it on. And I can, like, every day, pretty much, there is a announcement that there is a missile from Yemen coming. So the fact that that is being tolerated again is very disappointing. But with that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Daily Objective and the reality show. Until then, bye-bye.